The Prime Minister held his first full press conference today since that shocking by-election loss that has some Liberal MPs calling for an urgent national caucus meeting. Have a listen to how that went.
Why are you refusing to meet with the National Caucus?
We've been engaged in lots of important conversations. I've had lots of calls with different members of caucus from across the country.
With all due respect, my two colleagues have asked the same question and they have not received a specific answer. Will you hold a national in-person caucus with your party, with the MPs?
The conversations that I'm having with MPs directly right across the country, the conversations that we're all having as Liberals are going to continue, and we're going to stay focused on Canadians.
Cabinet ministers who are speaking publicly are backing Trudeau's leadership and his approach to dealing with his caucus.
Prime Minister Trudeau is our leader, and he's being able to bring a team around him to make sure that we deliver for Canadians.
He has been reaching out to individual members of caucus. I expect that he will continue to do so, as will members of cabinet. I think that is the appropriate thing for him to be doing at this point in time.
It's always a bit of a challenge in the summer when people are dispersed throughout the country, but I do think it's important that we do get together. We will absolutely be getting together in September.
Okay, in September, what are the risks of waiting that long? We're going to talk about that with the Power Panel. Sherelle Evelyn is the managing editor of The Hill Times. Amanda Alvaro is a former Liberal Party communication strategist. And here with me in Ottawa, Tim Powers is a former strategist for Conservative parties, and Jordan Leiknitz is a former NDP strategist. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Amanda, I know he's got NATO next week. That's a summit the Prime Minister has to go to. Can they really wait until September to get the full caucus together, given everything that's going on?
Well, it's like the question that's being posed is being posed from media and maybe from the public and certainly from a couple of disgruntled MPs. But it sounds to me that the Prime Minister is meeting with caucus. He's talking to caucus. He's having those conversations. And when you look at the letter that has been talked about, the letter asking for this national caucus meeting and the letter that's really inquiring about whether or not the Prime Minister is fit to lead, is 8 or 9 members of caucus. This is a 155 member caucus. So arguably there's 95% of caucus that, doesn't need this national caucus meeting or isn't questioning his leadership. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he needs to continue to succumb to pressure that's coming from either external sources or from regularly disgruntled MPs doing their regularly disgruntled thing. I think that he should continue to have those conversations that he's having. And I think, for the MPs who have come out in support, it's another endorsement and recognition to the public that there are members of cabinet and members of caucus that fully support the Prime Minister at this time.
Okay, let me rephrase the question then. I've spoken to disgruntled MPs and I guess gruntled MPs, for lack of a better term. They all want to see some kind of change. So, okay, maybe he waits until September to meet. Can he wait that long to demonstrate change or signal significant change? Because the more MPs you talk to, they say they want to see something in the next 2 weeks to know that he's serious about this. What are your thoughts?
Is that question to me?
Yes. That's for you, Amanda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it goes back to what I just said. Like, who are they? Is this the 8 or 9 MPs that wrote the letter? Is this the 5% of caucus who, again, if we look at the names that have been publicly put out, those are names that are regularly disgruntled. If 95% of the caucus doesn't want to come together for a national meeting at this time, or feels that we need to stay the course and stay calm and carry on and come together in September, why would the Prime Minister feel the pressure to succumb to 8 or 9 voices who are saying that we have to, that they have to have this meeting? Seems to me that he should be having these individual conversations like he's having and get a consensus from the majority. Okay,
Tim, your thoughts?
Well, maybe there is this alternative universe where there are giddy Liberals who are happy and feel no actions are necessary. I'm not making fun of Amanda here. I'm just making fun of the fact that every Liberal that seems to talk, be they gruntled, disgruntled, in between, A, B, C, D, whatever way they categorize themselves, are talking about the plight of the party and the fact that it is, whether it's the problem with the leader or something else, that something is not right. So you would think, unless this is a deliberate strategy of the Prime Minister to be out there taking his licks, listening to the criticism, continuing to say he's calling people to look like he's doing some contrition. You'd think, as we would call it, you would want a come to Jesus sort of meeting, whereby you all got in a room and you got the opportunity to get out whatever it is you want to get out and potentially come out united. There may be other moves that they're planning, but the Prime Minister right now, unless this is a strategy of deliberate contrition, doesn't really look like he's in control, doesn't really look like he gets it. Even in some of the other answers today to his questions, you mean he was talking about a threat to democracy, and while that is true, I think there are many in Canada who view his leadership, not necessarily a threat to democracy, I won't say that, but lacking at the moment. So they don't listen to the words that he is saying. And, you know, he's going to be in this odd spot at the NATO meeting next week when there'll be potentially three lame ducks there with him. Joe Biden, Macron, and Sunni.
Yeah, I don't know what the Brits are going to do because their election is tomorrow. And they'll have to.
He will still be the prime minister.
But who goes, right? But Jordan, on this, like the answer today, when he was asked about things, the Prime Minister talked about what was happening around the world. I mean, like, look at what's happening in France, the UK, you know, Italy looks stable compared to everybody else in the G7 now.
Bring back.
But it reminded me a little bit of when asked about the affordability and inflation challenge. It said, look what's happening around the world. But the question is, what are you going to do about this specific thing that's affecting you and us here in this country? And he went global. So
the problem continues to be that we are here in Canada and we live in Canada and voters live in Canada. And although it is true that in comparison to many other G7 countries, Canada is doing well, that's not how most people think about these issues. And I can also guarantee you that's not how most Liberals in caucus are looking at their chances at their own seats, right? The reality is that after St. Paul's and looking at the poll numbers where they are right now, there's no such thing as a safe Liberal seat anymore in this country. And the fact that the Prime Minister doesn't feel that that merits a caucus meeting, look, I think Amanda's math is pretty generous. I think that the people who aren't talking publicly to media right now, they're certainly talking privately, and they're very unhappy. And so there's a risk that in this period right after the by-election, where the Prime Minister has made no real change, even to his core messages, the things he's saying this week are really pretty much the same things that he's been saying prior to the by-election. So there's not been a shift. And I think it makes him look weak, and I think it risks making him look like he's afraid to gather all of his MPs together in one place and hear from them, because he might not like what they have to say.
Sherelle, the Hill Times always has its finger on the pulse of the Liberal backbench. What's your sense of what's going on in there right now?
Well, caucus management has, I think it's no secret, that's never really been Prime Minister Trudeau's forte. It's never really been his strength. We hear it time and time again that getting any sort of time with him as, party leader, as Prime Minister, whether you're a backbencher, a cabinet minister, parliamentary secretary, it's really hard to talk to the Prime Minister. So the fact now that he has this, uprising of, be it 9 people, be it more. We don't really know how many people are willing to, put their voice to this idea of wanting this groundswell of support for this meeting. But it's never really been something that he's been good at handling, as long as what he's had on his side all this time is that the Liberals have been winning. Or if they weren't winning, at least they were ahead of the polls. They had something that he could hang his hat on and say, if you stick with me, then things are going to look up for you. He doesn't have that right now. And so you have that paired with the fact that that has traditionally not been good at talking to caucus. It creates this vacuum where all of a sudden now everybody has something to say and they don't feel as though they're being heard. Yes, there could be reasons for, not talking to them right now, not having the national meeting right now. Do you want to let the by-election fervor die down? Do you want to wait until things are a little busier in September when maybe there's less people paying attention because, of all the other things that are going on, going back to school and going back to work after vacation and Parliament ramping back up and all those things, because the headlines are going to be fast and furious. If we think they're coming now, they're going to be, anytime they do have this meeting, we are going to hear about it. We're going to hear what was said. There's going to be leaks and yada, yada, yada. So when do you want to do that? All of those things to balance, and then you want to tie in the fact that there's the by-election next that has to be called by the end of the month in Montreal. So there's going to be talk about that when that date is announced. Are the Conservatives going to pull off another Toronto-St. Paul's? So there's all kinds of reasons as to why he might not want to have the conversation now, and there's also all kinds of reasons why he's just really bad at having the conversation, full stop.
So a couple of things just to throw on the table here that I got from a lot of conversations over the last couple of days. The calendar doesn't work in their favor if they wait, because La Salle-Mard-Verdun, which is the by-election that Sherelle mentioned, has to be called by the end of this month, which means that the vote will probably happen at sometime early to mid-September, right around the time caucus is supposed to meet. Liberals don't have a candidate right now. They're having a hard time finding a candidate. The NDP have a good candidate, and the fear is that they could lose the seat there. If you wait until September to get the caucus together at a scheduled time, and you've got a rough by-election, another by-election loss, the anxiety that's in there, Amanda, that's going to turn into a panic, is what Liberals are saying to me today. And they need to have some demonstration of a new direction. Like, a national caucus meeting is kind of a process thing. It's outcome they're more focused on now. That the listening and we hear you, that was a conversation for London last year. There's a whole different conversation that needs to happen now. They want to see some demonstrable change. So Amanda, knowing that, this is what's being communicated to the Prime Minister, and that's more than just the 8 MPs who signed George Chahal's letter. What are the kind of things you can do right now to sort of stabilize the caucus before you try to reconnect with the country?
Well, I'm not suggesting at all that there aren't changes that need to be made. I know there are changes that need to be made, but I do think that somebody decided that the one and only outcome right now is a national caucus meeting. Who decided that? Who put that narrative out and decided that the one thing that the Prime Minister can do to solve all is to have this national caucus meeting? I would argue it's actually the wrong time to have a national caucus meeting. I would argue that having one-on-one conversations would be way more productive at this juncture. 8 or 9, whatever number it was, individuals signed that letter. That's the number. All caucus members were asked to sign the letter, and 95% of them didn't. So perhaps 95% of them don't want to have a national caucus meeting. Perhaps they want to deal with this in other ways.
Right.
So I think that, yes, obviously it serves the Conservative Party to have this kind of narrative out that, the Prime Minister is avoiding this opportunity to be in front of his caucus. But if he was really avoiding, he wouldn't be having these one-on-one conversations. So I think it's out there, and change needs to be made and things need to be done. But I don't think anyone's suggesting that those things aren't being done. It's just not being done in the way that the media is asking or framing it to be done.
Okay, first of all, everything I laid out there is from conversations with double-digit numbers of Liberal MPs, and some of those are in cabinet, and you can throw staffers into that. So it's not a media frame. It is what the caucus is flat out saying, Tim, that they want to see done, and they want to see it done quickly. So they want to have a national caucus meeting, whatever. That's their choice. I'm curious, what are the steps you can actually take? What are the changes you can actually make to deal with this, right?
I think you could probably find uniformity around this table. If we were all giving advice, they need a significant disruption. So the top disruption, which apparently is not going to happen to the Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister leaving. So who's next? Well, Chrystia Freeland. Do you make a big change at finance? That sends messages on different levels. There's a Toronto Star report, as we know, that suggests maybe or maybe not. There's a conversation happening with Mark Carney. Mark Carney get now would be good for the Liberals.
I don't see any way this Prime Minister could put an unelected person into his cabinet.
Again. Disruption of a significant level. The other thing to do, cast off a signature policy. The closest one, which is unlikely to get cast off, is carbon pricing, because if he casts that off, then he's got a whole other rebellion at play. And Ken MacDonald, who you and I both talked to yesterday, said the same thing to both of us, which is, I don't even believe, I'm paraphrasing him now, that if he cut that off right now, it would have any real meaningful effect because it is so identified with the government. So the disruption is probably some senior cabinet changes and perhaps some policy initiative that is more inclined to give people a bit of a break on some form of taxation.
So on the policy shift, Jordan, I was speaking to some Liberals today, said to me that this was always a government that tacked to the left, just where they were, but they've been dragged even further to the left because of the supply and confidence agreement. And they've moved further and further away from the center, and as you know, there are a lot of former Liberals who want them to snap back to that position. Now that is sort of a rejection of the base they've built over the last decade or so, that Justin Trudeau has been there. But what kind of a policy shift could they do to demonstrate to the country the sort of change that goes beyond just settling the caucus down?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think those Liberals who have that complaint have had that actually long before the confidence and supply agreement. So I don't think that that's actually particularly unique to this sort of 2-year period here. And look, I think rather than it being a drag to the left or right or anything like that, I would say really what the agreement has done is provided sort of the nuts and bolts of a policy agenda for the government over the last couple of years. It's provided them with really most of their signature accomplishments, and it's given them a bit of a purpose and direction. Now, if people don't like that purpose and direction, then I think that it manifests sometimes in a criticism of the agreement. But I would argue that the Liberals would probably be worse off without that type of content, as you can see that they're now using that as some of their most popular pieces to go out and sell to voters. In terms of a policy shift, I think that there is an opportunity in the agreement. At this point, the Liberals likely need it much more than the NDP does. They can always go back to the NDP, revisit, renegotiate, refresh that maybe around another policy initiative, but it would be digging back in to big program spending, and there is real resistance.
That's a challenge right now. That's a challenge.
Yeah, so I don't think that that's particularly a viable path for them at this moment. They've got a real problem.
So, Cheryl, what's your sense of the options maybe being looked at here? I know it's very much, there's a tight inner circle inside the PMO, and they've got to figure out what their plan is and decide how they're going to approach things. And caucus is full of ideas. They're all saying, let's have change, without clearly articulating, the 3 steps necessarily where there's a consensus. What's your sense of what the Liberals might do to deal with all of this?
Well, of course, there's always, we talk about that tight inner circle, and there is always the option, which I suppose would be frowned upon by some, of changing the inner circle and not talking, Tim talked about Chrystia Freeland, but I'm talking about people like the Chief of Staff, like people who have been with the Prime Minister since he was mounting a leadership campaign for the party, over a decade ago. Katie Telford is the longest serving Chief of Staff to a Prime Minister ever. And a lot of the things that go along with Trudeau come from Katie Telford, and they are very tightly knit. So if you're talking about change, would it be something that would appease the rank and file if there was that change to the very inner circle? If you can't get rid of Trudeau, if you get rid of Telford, does that calm the waters? I don't know. But I do think it would take something drastic because, last summer they had the cabinet shuffle. That was supposed to be, the big reset. And we didn't really see that happen. They had the talk, they talked to caucus, everybody aired their grievances. Everybody kind of calmed down for a second, and then things started up again. So I don't think that there is anything that he could say in a caucus meeting without coming in with something tangible to say, this is what we're going to do to change it, short of me leaving. That is really going to calm things down. Yeah, and that cabinet shuffle last July, Amanda, that ultimately led to Carolyn Bennett leaving in Toronto St. Paul, led to David Lametti leaving in LaSalle-Mard. So, unintended consequences. At the time, they were worried about the suburbs, not the urban core. And look, it's easy to say fire the staff. That does nothing to change your relationship with the voting public, right? That is entirely an internal thing, and it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. But so, Amanda, just as the final point, if you were advising the Prime Minister right now on steps he could take to sort of calm things down and keep things moving in a good direction, what would be the first thing you think he could do?
I would do a full core press on communications. I think that they need a contrast strategy. It's going to start to highlight what is at stake to voters early on now, and what Poilievre really stands for, what it could look like. They have to start punching back. And I think that they've taken a relatively passive approach, and the approach needs to be much more assertive heading into the summer and definitely heading into the fall.
Yeah, we are already seeing Daniel Smith put out attack ads on Naheed Nenshi, and it still hasn't really happened between the Liberals and Mr. Poilievre. Okay, we got to leave it there. I'm sure we'll talk about this again. We'll see. I want to thank the Power Panel, Cheryl Evelyn, Amanda Alvaro, Tim Powers, and Jordan Leibniz.